retail is past the therapy stage. It is about entertainment, and some brands are getting it really right.
Ritu David is a creative solutionist entrepreneur and kingmaker with over 20 years of experience at the intersection of business, behavior, and artificial intelligence. As the founder of the Data Duck, she's a global leader in improving customer acquisition cost and customer lifetime value for clients.
I had a client who was like, oh, no one's going to buy a 14 lakh necklace online without seeing it. And I'm like, let's try it. And we've been able to sell a lot at that price range in jewelry.
In India?
In India.
What are the top 5 things that brands are currently doing that are making sure that people are actually hitting that pay button?
Button is actually your voice. Now we're moving to a space where you can just pay using your voice. In fact, I'm speaking to a mall in Thailand and we're looking at saying, oh yes, I'll buy it. And then you just go to the concierge and pick it up.
So Ritu, let's get down to it and understand first up, what is retail therapy?
Absolutely. I think retail has now moved into the space of entertainment because it's so accessible. So when you talk to people saying, what are you going to do on the weekend? They're like, oh, we're going to the mall. So it's not specific about, I want to buy a pair of jeans, so I'm going to the mall. It's very like, I'm going for the mall for entertainment. And I'm pretty sure that most of us scroll through their phones and added stuff to cart and then not really checked out. Exactly.
All the time.
Yeah. And so there's a whole bunch of, this is terrible for a whole sector of people because there's all these people taking care of e-commerce and they care about like the add to cart ratio and how many people check out, and they're like, oh my God, cart abandonment is so high. I'm like, oh, it's just because we treat it like entertainment now. We don't really intend to check out. Maybe for a second we intend to. But yeah, I think retail is past the therapy stage. It is about entertainment, and some brands are getting it really right in that space. Yeah,
and I'm going to come to that, but I just wanted to understand first up, does it transcend across all sort of demographics, or are there trends that you observe in India that are very different from what we see overseas? Well, you know, there's high income consumers that are sort of splurging to satisfy some sort of a need, or does it transcend across all income groups and demographics?
I'll stick to India because India is already so diverse, right? And that's why I love working here, because it's always a new problem. At the sort of H&I level where there's less constant, vacays overseas, there is a lot of shopping in malls and online, and we're seeing people, like I had a client who was like, oh, no one's going to buy a 14 lakh necklace online without seeing it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's try it. And we've been able to sell a lot at that price range in jewelry.
In India?
In India.
Online?
Online. We still see lots of high ticket purchases online. More and more as we're moving from a cash economy onto online payments.
And no, these companies and brands are obviously capitalizing on this, right? And that's what I want to get to. For example, Gen Z, I mean, they have their own quirks and, consumer behavior. I believe that they like real people instead of celebrities. They're quite price conscious. So how are brands really jumping onto the bandwagon and taking advantage of the data that they're gathering to adhere to this, to give people what they want?
They do not want overproduced ads.
Yeah.
They want smart guerrilla campaigns. They want something cool. They want something interesting. Or you just take a photo and someone be like, check this out. Right?
Which is relatable, I guess.
It's relatable, and it's not overproduced. No one has, because it's a time for A/B testing, right? A/B testing is, in our company, we run a digital campaign for someone. We will run 50 ads at the same time. Now, no one has the bandwidth, forget the budget, to produce 50 of those ads that we used to produce 20 years ago, right? Like Mad Men style, all money in one thing, right?
Yeah.
So we produce these lo-fi ads, which are very easy to produce and very swift. And we keep tweaking things in the background. So we use AI to tweak things in the background. So maybe your background will be blue in one ad. Maybe it'll be green in one ad. Maybe your hair will be parted on the other side in one ad. Maybe, do you know?
Yeah.
So we use AI to make all these tweaks, and we run all these ads and we see what's working,
Working.
which permutation combination is working. And at the end of it, we get a formula that we know, okay, for this brand, this audience, this kind of thing works, or it's working now.
You know, I'm curious. I had this friend of mine who works in an FMCG company, and it was interesting data that she got. When she went to the small towns, she said that having Katrina Kaif, for example, on the cover of a shampoo sachet will prompt the person to say, hey, if Katrina's hair can look that amazing, I want to buy it. Now that we're talking to a younger, a more educated audience, is what I'm talking about, how much is influencer marketing actually influencing people to go out there and say, hey, if my favorite influencer or someone I follow closely on social media is on that, shampoo or promoting that TV, is going to make me go to my wallet and buy that?
Yeah. So I'll split it up because I think the top of funnel decisions where it's awareness, I think customer awareness is still driven by celebrities and influencers in India because they have the highest reach. If I say something, no one's gonna even know, right?
Yeah.
So I think when Katrina Kaif says something, people know. So the awareness comes in to the consumer's mind with influencers and with celebrities. Once the awareness comes in, another thing in a trust deficit economy is that we aggregate our trust and we place it in people completely. So, for example, what I've noticed is you will have a cricketer selling a mutual fund, right? You will have a cricketer also selling jewelry, which in Australia, for example, we love Hugh Jackman. But if Hugh Jackman tries to sell us an online course on maths, we'll be like, dude, we're not buying it, right? So if Hugh Jackman sells us Dog Pound, which is a gym, we'll buy it because he's ripped. He's Wolverine.
Yeah.
You know? So where we don't have absolute trust across sectors with one person. But in India, we do. And I think that's beautiful, right? With it also comes a sort of monopoly, right? Where the top influencers and the top celebrities can sell you anything. From, what you clean your floor with to which airline you choose to fly with, right? So there is nothing that they cannot sell you.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting thing, but I feel that Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're open to the top of funnel awareness, but the consideration and the final purchase is not so influencer driven as we'd like to think, right? So a lot of it is the consideration will happen if cool people are doing it. So the mood board of the brand is cool and they're featuring cool people.
Yeah.
I'm happy
and cool
to buy
doesn't
it.
have to be celebrity.
Cool doesn't have to be celebrity, right? And then that's why we have more and more segmentation. So initially, everyone bought luggage. I mean, not initially, but originally people bought luggage according to what they could afford. There was Delsey, there was Samsonite, there was American Tourister, and then there's this other one that's come in that's selling like...
Safari.
Hotcakes, Safari, right?
Yeah.
So they're these. And people would decide according to what they wanted to spend on the suitcase, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
Now people are deciding not just on the spending point, but on the, does it fit my brand?
Yeah.
Who I see myself as, right? So if I see myself as, and I think I've fallen in this trap as well, like if I see myself as like slightly, I'm very design oriented, so I will probably purchase a Napadori trunk.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's cool.
Yeah, but
for
maybe
me.
it's not entirely functional. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm
exactly.
not
Like
this brand,
it's not
of course.
necessarily cool
Yeah,
for a Gen Alpha working in my
Understood.
team, right?
Yeah,
They're like, dude, that's not cool. You know what's cool?
Yeah.
It's this because it has a charger in it. I'm like, why do you need a charger? Anyway, so what's cool is so contextual. So then we don't have bulk.
Yeah.
Right? So now we're not aiming at selling. When people say like, oh, India is a billion point data, we're no longer a homogeneous billion point something.
Yeah,
And it's not just price points that consumers are looking at. They're looking at, does this fit my personality? And the great thing is that we all are different. And so what will appeal to you will not necessarily appeal to me.
Very customized.
It's so customized.
Yeah.
And it's epic because you get to see the youngsters' true personality through the things that they choose to own and purchase.
Yeah, it is. I love that you said that you're buying things based on your brand or what you think your brand is and you identify with. Do people, is it something that you observe when you're spending a large amount? I know I tend to do this. I overthink it, or I think about it a lot. Was that worth it? Am I going to really wear it? Next time I need to be more frugal. Does that happen a lot? Is there a difference that you observe? Men, women, Gen Z, millennials?
So there's two angles to it.
Okay.
One I'll talk about, and I think everyone feels this and sees this more and more, but there's an alarming rate of using debt to finance expenditure. And there are terms around it like spend vesting and this and that to make people feel like it's an investment. Right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the good that you're purchasing is going to diminish in value. So let's remove the word investment from everything there, right? So, and let's just say there's so much marketing around like, oh, this suit is an investment in your career. It's not, right? Or maybe it is, but you need to decide that for yourself and what your career is and what you need. So if you're on Wall Street and everyone's buying this suit that costs a bomb and you just need to buy 2 suits to fit in, do it.
Yeah.
Right? Do it. But you need to know your situation and whether it's an investment in your career for that. Like, we haven't evolved that much in our brains, right? So anything that's scarce, we get obsessed with. And we need to get it. So if you facilitate scarcity, then, I mean, look at dating. Who has the upper hand? It's the one that chased the other person.
Yeah.
Right?
Always.
Always.
Yeah.
In everything.
That's the story you tell for eternity.
Exactly.
Right?
Like, I think the spending is twofold. One is like, is it real scarcity or manufactured scarcity?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if there isn't enough water, go and buy some, right? But if there isn't enough allocations of a particular handbag, please just leave it, right? And so we need to understand, it's like that toilet roll hoarding that happened in Australia. Like, I couldn't find any during the pandemic and it was quite disastrous. And then after that, we have the spending that is being made so easy because you're like, oh yeah, I can totally spend 5,000 rupees a month from my salary of, say, 50,000 rupees. Like, yes. But then you don't realize how many of those decisions you're making that stack on top of each other. So now your total EMI is quite high, and then people aren't ready for shocks. So I think as consumers, as young consumers who have never had a shock in their life, like, I'm not saying they haven't had other shocks, like, I'm sure life is challenging for everybody. I'm talking about a shock like, say, an accident where you need to buy a new bike, or a shock that's traditionally covered by insurance, like a healthcare shock or whatever shock there is. Another shock is having to suddenly buy an engagement ring for your girlfriend because she'll leave you if you don't get married. So, these kind of like surprise events in your life where you have all these EMIs and it starts getting tougher and tougher to justify these EMIs vis-a-vis the real things that you need. So I think the percentage of EMIs that are encroaching into people's, disposable income is quite high. Yeah. And keeping up with the Joneses is tough.
Yes, I was just going to say. So Ritu, you spoke about scarcity and that being one of the factors that drives people to buy. What are the top 5 things that brands are currently doing that are making sure that people are actually hitting that pay button?
Button is actually your voice. Sound wave technology has been around for ages. So when 2 different devices, say this cup and this, have to speak to each other, we use near field technology. We use things like Bluetooth, RFID, but we also have sound waves. So sound waves happen to also be how voice travels, right? So now instead of saying, oh yeah, I'll pay for this, and putting in a pin, we've moved from cash to card taps to a pin like scan and just do. Now we're moving to a space where you can just pay using your voice. And of course there's some hardware that's needed so that people know whose voice it is and whose bank account they need to take it away from. But imagine there being like a device asking you, would you like to listen to this sleep story? And you just say yes, and it gets deducted, right? So whether it gets deducted from your bank account or from your wallet is a different thing, and that's for the regulators to sort of look into whether voice should be direct payment. This is very much out there, and it's not so far away in places like Thailand, where shopping is a massive push for tourism and their GDP growth. We're seeing, in fact, I'm speaking to a mall in Thailand, and we're looking at saying, oh, yes, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Imagine, and then you just go to concierge and pick it up. So the gap between, usually what happens, and I shop like this, I'll buy five, I won't buy, I'll pick up 5 shirts, and by the time I reach the line to pay, I've decided that, oh, I don't really need one.
Yeah.
And then at the payment counter, instead of giving all 5 in a bucket, I say, here's what I'm taking, and I'm sorry, but I think I'm not going to take these 3. But imagine if that gap is not there,
Yeah.
and it's just deducting, how much more would you shop?
Yeah, 100%.
Now the end side, the other side, because everything's an ecosystem, so you get people to spend more, and then the question is about returns. Will there be more returns? That's something I'm not paid to look into, so I don't actually know. So that's the first one that I think is quite exciting, voice, just using your voice to shop and not having to even have a phone, like you need your phone with you, but not having to have like that scan and all that friction. And, you know, the second one is this, it's very smartly used with anything associated with children. So if you buy in Mothercare or Hamleys, if you buy something at Mothercare, you get a coupon to spend at Hamleys, right? And that coupon of, say, 500 rupees is not, it's owned by the same parent company. It's not available, you can't use it now, right? You can use it after a week.
Yeah.
So if I get the coupon from Mothercare for Hamleys, I've done this. I went to Hamleys and I'm like, oh, 500 rupees off, no like minimum spend, I can pick up something. I went there and they're like, oh, after picking up what I wanted at the counter, they're like, oh, madam, you can come back next week. Your voucher's only there for next week. So I'm like, okay. Tested it, went back next week, and then they gave me a coupon for Mothercare that was then only open next week, right? So there's this like this coupon cage that I just keep going round in. So that's another thing that I do recommend brands do, but as a consumer, it can, I mean, I don't know.
But coupons definitely work to see your points pile up, to see how you're getting this plus this. It works for everyone.
It works.
Yeah.
It really works.
Yeah.
And brands are getting more and more attuned to psycholinguistics. So for example, if I tell you, you get a sample, you're like, yeah, I deserve a sample because you're trying to sell this to me, so give me the sample, right?
Yeah.
So the sample makes you feel like a consumer, and that you're doing the brand a favor by sampling this so that you see whether you like it or not. Brands have decided to rephrase this to minis.
Yeah.
So now if I give you a mini, you're like, ooh, I got a mini.
Yeah.
Right? And you look at that mini as oh my God, I'm getting a mini. So just using the word mini instead of samples is really changing the way people move towards like, oh, if I spend just 200 more, I'll get a mini. Right? Whereas before it's like, I'll get a sample, I'm not going to really like look around and spend.
Yeah.
So I think for a very long time, copywriting, the essence of emotion tied to words has not been looked into, you know, especially on digital. And I think even ChatGPT won't do this for you. So you do need someone who understands the nuances of this. The fourth thing that, you know what, it's so annoying, but it works, is someone calling you and saying that, thank you for being such a loyal customer of our brand. We have an event. Can you make it?
Yeah.
Now I'll say, oh, I can't make it, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I live in Mumbai, your event is in, you know, Baroda, I can't make it. And they're like, oh, okay. Is it all right if I send you the the minis that we would be sharing for every one of our lovely family that come to the event, because you can't make it. I'm like, yeah, for sure. So now I've sent them my address.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really working for brands, because now that you have your address, I may not see an email, I may not see a text message, I may ignore WhatsApp, but if you send me something to my home, I'm going to remember you, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of brands, even the Good Bug has started sending newsletters home, like a physical paper, right? And getting into someone's home, it's a winner, right? So that's another thing. And then, of course, we talked about, quick commerce. There are so many minis or samples that enter your home through quick commerce that you don't even know. Like, we started using a new brand of dahi, and I'm like, oh, what is this? They're like, didn't you order it? I'm like, no, I didn't order it. No, yehi chahiye abhi, right?
Yeah.
So there are like little Trojan horses. So these like products
making their way
into my pantry. And then we just started using them, but we didn't know how they got into our pantry.
Yeah.
And it's because it came free through a quick commerce thing. So I think quick commerce is using a lot of data to decide who needs what, who could be moved from what, and why, how.
How do you know maybe when, or what is it that people should keep in mind when you're shopping or indulging in retail therapy to fulfill an emotional need?
Yeah.
For example, I mean, I do that as well, right? You go online, it's so easy, you fill up that cart, you say, I deserve it, I had this, or I've worked hard. But how do you know when you're sort of crossing that line and it's becoming an addiction, or has it become an addiction and we don't even know?
I'll give you my perspective as someone who isn't a psychologist or a therapist.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So this is not, I feel like they're online and offline, the different things you can do, right? So I'll start with online. I have a friend who, this is back in the day when we used to use credit cards. I love the fact that I'm saying back in the day when we used to use credit cards for spending, but she never stored her credit card details on any browser.
Okay.
And she would freeze her credit card, like literally freeze it. So you get a container, you fill it with water.
Huh?
Yeah. And you put your credit card in the middle and it gets frozen, right?
Okay.
Now you've added something to cart and the credit card needs to melt and be accessible to her for her to purchase. Okay, that was her way to beat this so-called addiction.
Yeah.
Right? And so what it gave her is a good, like, even if she popped it in the microwave, right?
Yeah.
Which she didn't because of, it's got something in it. Yeah. It would be at least 30 minutes to an hour. And just that gap made her shop a lot less, right? I think the thing is about impulse control, right? And the second thing that I've seen a lot of people doing is they add to cart as the new favorites. You know, before we used to have this like, oh, my favorites list, and people are like, whatever, I'm just going to add to cart, right? And I'll figure out what to check out with later. Yeah. Now this add to cart abandonment email that comes to you, leave the cart, wait for the email, and then see like, oh, do I need to buy this or not? And sometimes those emails are like super helpful because I've forgotten to buy dog food for my dog and we were running out, and then this abandoned cart email came. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to go hungry. So these, I'm not saying that this is all bad, but I'm just saying that these are a few things that you can do. Just reduce the gap, right? Because especially at night when you're alone and you're on Instagram and you're like,
that's what I'm saying. It's
nobody
so
knows this is
easy.
happening. Yeah.
Wow, a lot of food for thought, Ritu.
Yeah.
I mean, we started off with retail spending, and then we've gone retail therapy, and now we've gone on to consumer behavior and impacting young children. And there's so much that you've really fed us with. So thank you for joining in and giving us all of those interesting tidbits.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so glad that you were my host. And this was a great chat.
I know, and I hope to take this forward offline as well. Yes,
of course.
God, I go home with so many takeaways, and I hope you did too. Hope you enjoyed this video of Temperament Season 2. But perhaps most importantly, if you find yourself consistently turning to shopping to manage difficult emotions, remember that it's okay to seek professional help. a qualified therapist, or a counselor can provide you with healthy coping mechanisms that no amount of retail therapy can replace. Your emotional well-being is worth so much more than any purchase that you make. Do feel free to share your comments, and I'd love to know, when was the last time you fell prey to such brands? What do you do when you think it's getting too much with retail therapy? Do share that in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.